Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kilowatt. My name is Bodie, and I am your host, and this is part 3 of the North America Charging Standard Extravaganza. Should that be what the title of these are? Maybe that's what we should title them. Anyway, this is part 3, and this episode is brought to you by the following Patreon supporters: Alan, Friendly Sleet 66, Joseph Gerbo, Jeffrey, Steve, Bruce W., and Isaiah. Now, if you are a keen listener, you'd be like, hey, you mentioned Gerbo like in episode on part 1. Why did you mention him again? Well, Jerry supports me on Acast Plus and on Patreon. And I'm thinking, Jerry, you should probably cancel your Patreon one because I know that you had an issue with that. But anyway, just a heads up that you're doing that. Moving on, I just realized it myself as we were talking right now. Moving on, let's jump into our North America Charging Standard episode, part 3. And we're going to delve into a little bit more. I know we've talked about this a little bit, but we're going to delve a little bit more into what would inspire EV manufacturers to adopt the North American Charging Standard. And then we're going to move on to the Society of Automotive Engineers. So let's set the table, shall we? I imagine all the EV manufacturers are taking a moment to contemplate developing their own connector, right? Tesla did it. It would make sense that all these other companies would be like, what if we did it? What would happen? Honestly, it would cost them a lot of money and there'd be minimal benefits in doing so. So they look at what's out on the market now. You have J1772 and CCS1 connectors. We've already talked about J1772. There's nothing wrong with that. And I won't hear anyone slander. I won't stand for anyone to slander the J1772 connector. However, the CCS1 connector does have some problems. And there's, feedback of countless EV owners who have an issue with the CCS1 connector. And we've talked about this, like it's hard to plug in. The cable's heavy. The cable is delicate. It's fragile. Sometimes they break, which leads the charger to be down for a long time. Those are not minor inconveniences. Like, the greater issue at hand is the struggle for charge point operators who use CCS1 connectors to keep their equipment online. So a study in 2022 by UC Berkeley researchers, it cast a little spotlight on 181 charging stations sporting 670 charge points across 9 counties in the Bay Area. So there's 181 stations, 678 plugs across 9 counties in San Francisco Bay Area. A significant 27.5% of the chargers with CCS connectors were inoperable upon testing. So they suffered from issues such as charge initiation failures, which is all about the software, network breakdowns, broken connectors, unresponsive screens, and payment system failures. So they tested all of these CCS connectors across 9 counties, 678 chargers, right? 27.5% of them were broken for a variety of reasons. 8 days later, they followed up with their evaluation with a random 10% of the EVSEs, the electric vehicle supply equipment, the chargers, and it indicated no improvement in functionality. And it's also noteworthy that nearly 5% of the time, charging cables fell short of reaching their EV charge port for these third-party EVs. So even EV companies that are designed to support third-party EVs, even EV charging companies, that are designed to charge cars that aren't Teslas, are falling short on their cable lengths. But this challenge isn't limited to the Bay Area. It's not just because it's in San Francisco, as much as a lot of people would like to blame it on San Francisco. That's not why. This is a reoccurring narrative of subpar charging experience shared by users across our nation. I don't have any idea what charging is like in if you don't live in the U.S. in your country. If you live outside of North America, let me know. I would be interested. Bodie at 918digital.com. But as it stands right now, It's a problem. It's a real problem in the U.S. This predicament is exacerbated exacerbated by the growing need for more chargers and more charging stations across the North America. Potential EV buyers are hearing about these horror stories when it comes to charging, and some of them are fairy tales, some of them are real. Right? I've not really heard about a stranded family due to a battery that ran out. I'm sure it happens, but I don't think it happens as much as people say it happens. So there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt out there. But on the other side, it doesn't help when you have these EV chargers that are broken on a regular basis, and they can be broken for a long time. But to be fair, Tesla isn't immune to these challenges. However, they seem to be a little bit more proactive in addressing these issues. And they do seem, anecdotally, because I don't have any numbers to prove this, they do seem to fix them faster. Tesla reports a 99.95% uptime in 2022, a 99.96% uptime in 2021. Although I don't know if that these numbers have been confirmed by an independent audit. It's just kind of Tesla saying, this is what we got. So what I'm saying, and what I've been trying to say throughout this series, is that charging networks are problematic. And it's problematic for EV adoption, and it's problematic when you need a charger. So the adoption of the NACS connector and NACS port will equip a vehicle with the versatility to charge on Tesla's supercharger network and other CPO sites with NACS connectors. Who knows, how much uptime? And I don't think just having a NACS connector is going to improve uptime at third-party charging networks or charging networks that aren't the supercharger. But if you have a car that's compatible with, a NACS connector, and you don't need to use an adapter, I mean, that's fantastic. I can't imagine that you're going to get your full charging speed when you use an adapter, right? If you're going from CHAdeMO to NACS, you're not going to get your full charging speed off of that. If you go to J1772 to NACS, there's going to be some slowdown with that adapter. And then adapters are expensive. So if you could just plug in anywhere, just like Tesla's doing. Tesla's putting the CCS1 adapter, Magic Dock adapters on their cars. If you can just plug in anywhere, I think that's going to be an advantage to us as EV owners. Not that long ago, I think it was in June, there was a JD Power intelligence report. And they said that embracing the NACS standard, automakers are connecting customers to the most expansive and reliable charging network. So that was JD Power that said that. The same report highlighted during Q1 2023, 21.6% of non-Tesla EV owners faced charging issues at stations, in contrast to 3.9% of Tesla owners experiencing similar problems at supercharger networks. So we have non-Tesla owners, 21.6%, which that Bay Area study that we talked about was 27.5%. So that's within that, normal, that range. And Tesla owners, 3.9% of that. So based on that, on the surface, this seems like a no-brainer. This seems like you would be dumb not to adopt the NACS connector, the NACS standard. Why wouldn't you? Well, I can give you one really good reason, and that is Elon Musk. Now, I do not have the negative emotions that some people have with Elon. Like, I do think he's kooky, and I do think sometimes his opinions are problematic, and I really wish that he had a little bit more of a stable, emotional foundation around him. And it wasn't quite what it is. But I don't dislike Elon Musk. But I also think that he's the kind of person, that would make agreements with a bunch of different auto manufacturers, get mad, and then flip the proverbial table over and take his charging connector home and leave all those other people stranded. They would sue him. They'd all be in court for years. He's still going to lose. He doesn't care. That would be the number one reason why I would not do business if I was a CEO of an automaker. I would not do business with Tesla. The number one. So something has to happen that removes that control. Like, you can have all of the lawyers sign all of the agreements. It doesn't seem from the outside that Elon cares about that. So you have to have something in terms of an actual standard, because just because it's called the North America Charging Standard, that doesn't make it a standard. So you have to have somebody come in and be independent third party, make it its own thing that one company doesn't control. And that's exactly what the Society of Automotive Engineers is doing. They are set to create a NACS standard, and CharIN, which is a global charging system association, EV group, they're supporting it. Now, CharIN also supports CCS 1 and 2. And back in November, when Tesla announced the NACS connector, this is what CharIN had to say. So I'm going to read it and we'll go through it. This is what they had to say back in November of 2022, when nobody except for Aptera was interested in adopting the NACS connector. CharIN applauds Tesla for including DIN 70121 and ISO 15118-02 communication standards for the NACS proposal. I'm guessing this has something to do with CharIN. We also appreciate Tesla's efforts to move the e-mobility market forward even faster than it's moving now. Here comes the hammer. However, we encourage stakeholders to investigate ways to focus on market acceleration rather than the creation of yet another form factor alternative, which will lead to further consumer confusion, delay in EV adoption. CCS has gone through many years of rigorous standardization processes, which is a required activity for any new standard proposal. After a decade of collaboration work, the domestic and international EV industry has aligned around CCS. So that's CharIN saying, this is cute, but no. You're adorable, but no. Also, the next standard, the Tesla connector, has been around since 2012. Again, this goes back to what I said last episode. It's not like they're just pulling this whole cloth out of the air and be like, hey, here you go. Here's a new connector. Like, this has been around, and it's been used a lot over the last couple of years. And what CharIN is really saying here, which is the equivalent. Okay, let's break this down here. What they're doing here is, let's pretend you see someone from your past that you didn't really care for that much, right? You don't ever want to see them be successful. You don't want anything bad to happen to them, but you don't want to hear about their successes, right? So you see them, you ask, hey, how's everything going? And they're like, oh, I just got this huge promotion with this enormous raise. I just bought a house, and I just got back from this amazing vacation, and I'm going on another amazing vacation next week. And you're like, oh, that's fantastic. Meanwhile, you're wearing the same underwear that you've worn for the last 4 days. Your tires are bald on your car because you can't afford to buy new tires. And they catch you picking out a hemorrhoid cream in the Safeway pharmacy. So they know you got hemorrhoids. CharIN in this situation has hemorrhoids. Like, their statement is like, that's cute, Tesla. Glad for your success. But you know what? What we're doing, we've put a lot of hard work into it. And honestly, things right now have turned around. CharIN has changed their opinion somewhat. They are now supporting efforts towards the North America Charging Standard. But they're still in a relationship with CCS. So here's a little bit from their website. I think it's on their front page. CharIN's next goal is to define requirements for the evolution of CCS related to standard and for the certification of CCS-based products I would imagine that much of what would work with CCS, honestly, would transfer over to the NACS standard. But yeah, it doesn't sound like they're not dropping the CCS connector anytime soon. But any improvements that they make on the CCS connector or any headway that they make, they will transfer over to NACS, or should. Now that leads us to the standards body, the Society of Automotive Engineers. The NACS connector, also in that world of SAE, will be known as SAE J3400. Now, the joint U.S. Office of Energy and Transportation worked with Tesla and the SAE to expedite the standardization of the Tesla connector. So this is a little bit from the press release from the Society of Automotive Engineers. Standardizing the NACS connector will provide certainty, expanded choice, reliability, and convenience to manufacturers, suppliers, and most of all, increase access to charging for consumers, said Frank Menchaca, president of the Sustainable Mobility Solutions, an innovation arm of the SAE affiliate Full Sight. It also went on to say that even though Tesla has said NACS connector is a standard, it is not a standard until it's gone through and reached industry consensus. And that standardization practice is intended to assure a reliable and consistent performance for any EV or any charging network. So how do they do this? Well, it was kind of hard to find information on how the Society of Automotive Engineers works in terms of the process for creating a standard, right? And I was more specifically interested in this situation because much of the Tesla connector was already done before they made it the North America charging standard. So I was curious. And then Tomorrow Today, which is a fantastic podcast from the Society of Automotive Engineers. It is great. I started listening to it back in July, and I would highly encourage you to listen to it as well. It's nerdy and full of good information. They had a podcast episode, and I'll put a link in the show notes, about the standardization of the North America charging standard. So we're going to go over that real quick. I'm not going to play, it was 45 minutes long. I'm not going to play any of the content from their podcast. I just encourage you to go and listen. But here are the highlights. Standardization for the NACS connector, part 1. I don't know why I said part 1. Moving on. Unlike typical standardizations starting from scratch or having to reverse engineer something, the North America charging standard already exists and has a significant user base, especially in the DC fast charging stations. And Tesla is just willing to hand over all of the technical paperwork for this, and so they don't have to reverse engineer or come up with something whole cloth, which is great. The process aims to provide a standard of interoperability, ensuring other manufacturers can easily adopt the connector, which is great. Unlike international standards that can take a very long time to come to fruition, the SAE process has it's a little bit different. This standardization efforts are driven by individual experts that are also involved in writing the standard. So consensus is easier to come by compared to international standards. And honestly, I don't know how consensus is made at the international level. So that's just what they said. So don't ask me any follow-up questions on that. The existence of the widespread use of NACS connectors facilitates faster standardization and direct access to necessary drawings and specifications, avoiding the need for reverse engineering. Okay, so we already talked about that. In the developing of this standard, they have all these knowledgeable individuals and organizations, including members of Tesla who work on this standard before, November 2022. So they have some insight that they can provide. And that will ensure accurate and effective standardization. Like I said, Tesla's had much of this standard already written. Will it be the same thing as it is today by the time they're done? Probably not, but it'll be pretty close. There's going to be further evolution of this standard and the charging infrastructure and the communication protocols and, the connected areas, all of that, we're going to start with something that's close to what Tesla decided that the North America charging standard should be. And then we're going to move forward with this form factor, this connector. Some of the challenges are that manufacturers need to make mechanical and electrical changes to align with NACS standards. Again, not Tesla's NACS, but the SAE J3400 NACS, right? That's probably why most of these companies aren't adopting this until 2025, because they want the standard to be written before they adopt it, would be my guess. Whatever the SAE does, it needs to be compatible with the existing infrastructure out there. So that's, probably not easy to do. So what's the timeline? Well, they're aiming to publish a technical information report in about 6 months. But the standard won't be complete for around 11 months. So we're looking at sometime next summer before the standard's complete. This is actually an expedited timeline because it typically takes between 16 and 18 months to develop a complete standard from scratch. So it's a little bit faster. But even then, there's going to need to be continuous vetting and best practice publications and, follow-ups and things like that. We need to completely reevaluate this stuff. And one of the questions that was asked is, will J1772 go away? And I think the same question can be asked for CCS1. And I would say the answer is maybe, but the J1772 standard will continue to live on and evolve, catering to regions that already use this connector. And then there's expectation that there will be some references from the J1772 document in the new J3400 NACS document in terms of technical documentation. They'll borrow from J1772, like communications protocols and things like that, which I think is smart. There's no sense in reinventing the wheel. And then, how is this beneficial? Standardization is seen as a way to reduce development costs, improve scalability, and ultimately benefit both the industry and consumers, right? We go back to that email that I was talking about on the last episode, and, won't adding another connector into the mix increase cost? Well, if we all go with one connector, which I don't think we should, that'll actually reduce cost. So I think that's important to note here. And then, the NACS standard could enhance charging experiences, making EVs more appealing, easy to charge, and thus promoting future EV adoption. I realize this is a lot, and if I'm not doing a very good job explaining this stuff, please let me know. I went through over 70 pieces of source material for this, not including the videos that I watched with the CEOs of Jim Farley, Mary Barra. I watched so many different videos, Sandy Monroe videos, you name it, to try and get as prepared as I could for this episode. And I know that it doesn't run smoothly. I don't think it flows very well. I think sometimes I feel like I'm all over the place. But if you have questions that you need me to answer, please let me know. It's Bodie, BODIE at 918digital.com. You can also find me on Twitter at 918digital, which is actually called X now. I didn't know if you know that. You can find me at 918digital there. And yeah, I hope everybody has a wonderful day, and I will talk to you on Friday.